Okay.
All right, so without further ado, my friend David McGuire, who is coming today, he works for a company we all know and love, but he's coming today as a MacGroup member.
Thank you very much. So, I've been a MacGroup member here now almost 10 years. I became a MacGroup member because I was looking for an answer at my former company. And I found it on the MacGroup IBBS boards. So for me, joining so I could ask a question and get an answer back 10 years ago was just amazing because you had nowhere else to go. That's what you needed. Today there's more sources for you to get answers, and that works out great. As Terry said, I do work for a company that we all know. We're not going to bring that up today, please. I am here as a MacGroup member doing something that I love and doing it with a group of people that I think are just fantastic, and that's every one of you. The topic is upgrading your Mac. We're going to go over some real basic things. We may take questions at the end, depending on time, probably be some time, and try and answer some questions. I don't know everything, and neither does anyone else in this room. And anybody that thinks they do, I'm sorry, you're mistaken. So, I may not have an answer for you, but you know what? I'll try and find it and be happy to share it with everybody here. First things first. Let's see if this works. Hey, look at that. Computers. They've come a very long way since I was a MacGroup member for the very first time. When I joined, my computer was beige. So, and I bought it at Sears, just so you know. That's how it was. It was a Performa 6200. Nothing at all like these new aluminum jobs. We're going to go over some real basic things. I'm not going to go in depth on how to replace a hard drive in an iMac, but I will touch on the subject. Apple is making their computers more and more less user-friendly is probably the best way to put it, which is not a bad thing for certain cases, because more and more of the users, they're not the people that want to open up the computer and dig inside and start playing with the internals. The MacBook Air is probably the best description of, yes, stay out of the inside. The Retinas are now the next one, and along with the new iMacs that came out in 2012, you don't want to try to open one of those. Just trust me on this. Bad things happen. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over just some basic user troubleshooting tips. If this keynote works the way I think it's going to work, life will be really good. Okay, so it's a little different. All right, first step I always recommend to people, restart the computer. It's not a badge of honor to say my computer's been up and running for 6 months and I've never turned it off. Restart it. There are so many good things that happen during a shutdown process and a boot up process that will just make your computer run more efficiently. And I can't tell you the number of people that I've assisted that, boy, it's just running slow. It's been running slower and slower for the last couple of months. And we restart the computer and suddenly it's zippy again. So a restart is a wonderful thing. Let's see if that works. Well, apparently it's not. Give me a second here. All right, well, there it is. The shutdown window. When you shut down your computer, you see the top window. If you notice the little blue box that says reopen Windows and logging back in, that's why your mail reopens. That's why Safari reopens. That's why iPhoto reopens and every other app that you had going. If you uncheck that box before doing a restart or a shutdown, those apps don't open up again. Yes, it's a wonderful feature to multitask. However, it slows down the computer because there's a whole lot going on. So to make your computing experience a better one, uncheck the box before you hit shutdown or before you restart. Next, updates. Way back when, people were always afraid of running the updates because it did bad things to their computers. The updates are put out there to make good things happen. Occasionally, something bad can happen, but usually, when that occurs, it's a case of there was something with your operating system that just wasn't 100%. You might have been 98, 99%, but not quite 100. And yeah, that update may have pushed it over the edge a little bit because of what it did. Don't be afraid of it. The updates are put out for a reason. It's to make things run better. Now, this is referring to the free software updates that you get, not a whole operating system, because sometimes the whole operating system updates, not always great. Like when 10.7 came out, suddenly Office 2004 was useless. Quicken, QuickBooks, that too. I'm sure a number of people here have probably experienced that joy. So the software updates that are the in between the OSs, those are really good for you to have up and going. So don't be afraid of them. They are good for you. Something that a lot of people that I'm quite surprised don't realize are your login items. To get to this window, you open System Preferences, you go into Users and Accounts. And if you go over to the login items, these are all the things that start up when you turn on the computer. There are certain apps that bury themselves in here that will slow you down like nobody's business. Skype will do this. So if you've ever had a friend say, how come Skype keeps popping up every time I turn it on? Usually because it's in here. If you click on the item and then down lower, click the minus symbol, it will remove it from startup items. It will not remove it from the computer. Another notorious item that would go in here was HP software for their printers. You would find the HP software showing up in here, whether it was for a scanner, whether it was for a printer, it would show up in here and it would want to launch their programs that came with their drivers and that. And a lot of people don't need it. This is also a great place to look if you've bought a new machine and you've migrated your data from your old machine to your new machine. Because you can find items in here that ran in your old machine, but maybe don't run in the current operating system that you are now in. I have seen a lot of Palm software move over. And I don't know about you, but I've never used a Palm device, and the people I know that haven't used it since probably '07 when the iPhone came out. So again, there's things in here that you can take out that will not hurt, but they will benefit you on the performance of your machine. So this is located in System Preferences, and it's under Users and Accounts. It used to be Users and Groups, now it's User Accounts, I believe. So, I know somebody with this desktop. Another thing you can do to make your computing experience a lot better, the less on your desktop, the better. And a lot of people, oh, it's just a couple of folders. It's just a couple of files. And they've got stuff all over the place. There's another one. This too will slow down the startup of your computer because it's going through every single file that's inside of every folder that's on the desktop. So with this going on, instead of booting up, within a few minutes, this is the go get the cup of coffee and come back, boot up. It gets worse. So If you can get the stuff off the desktop, that's great. I have seen people have folders on their desktop and they're like, oh, but I put it in a folder. Yeah, but it's 30 gigs worth of video. And that will definitely just slow you down to a crawl. So the less you can put on the desktop, the better it is for you. If you're concerned about organization, that's what the Finder's for, because it gives you those folders so you can put your videos in the movies category. Pictures and pictures, documents and documents.
I'm sorry, I'm a Windows user, so I'm kind of ignorant with regards to the Macs. But on Windows, we can stick folders on there.
Yeah. And
the things that kind of, I have actually two questions. But the first one is, let's be on this topic here. Are these shortcuts, or are they actually files and folders?
These are files and folders that people do this and that. And typically on a PC, you've got aliases to get you to that application.
Are the Macs so strong that this is allowed, that people do this?
Yeah, people do this all the time. But is it a good idea? It's not a case of being allowed. It's just, it happens. And if you want it to run smoother, the less on the desktop,
absolutely,
the better. And that. What really gets me sometimes is I found some people that this artwork here is folders on someone's desktop. Apparently they're artistic and they were able to arrange this in a manner, and I like that the hard drive's down at the bottom looking like the shooting mechanism, and that's pretty cool. But again, my understanding is that desktop had about 100 gigs worth of information, and they couldn't understand why it ran slow. I can tell you why. Now, being artistic, there's this one. And I think this is great because what it's showing, the fangs are fonts. Terry?
Why wouldn't they just, even if they did it once, take a picture of it, and that's your desktop picture, and you put all over wherever?
You would think. Yeah. So I think it's pretty interesting. I also like the fact that the DVD they have in there is the eye of the dinosaur. So one of the other things you can do, and I'm sure most people know it, you can color code your folders. So if you want certain folders to be a certain color so you can see where it is faster, that's great. That's the whole point. It's been like that forever with the Mac operating system. A lot of people don't know that, but you can color code that stuff to your heart's content, spend a long time doing it. And that's what you can end up with. So, you know, if you want to play Spider Pig, go right ahead, but that's what some very creative people have been doing. It's not recommended. So do yourself a favor, don't do this. And while we're on the topic of cleaning, not only your desktop, you want to clean your computer too. And it doesn't matter if it's a Mac or a PC, I don't care. This is the inside of a MacBook Pro. This is what's known as debris. Every computer has fans inside to help cool the computer down. Those fans act as an air filter. This is what you get after a couple years of just normal use. The inside of your computer can look like this, especially if you have pets.
Or you're losing hair.
Or if you're losing hair, yeah. And yes, your Mac can look this way. So for cleaning your computers, so we've got a Mac Pro on one side, we've got a Mac Mini on the other. If you have an iMac and you want to clean it, there's two tools that you need, and you don't have to really open the computer up much to do it. You need a decent vacuum with like a wand attachment on it. A shop vac is great. They do make anti-static vacuums that if you want to use them, you can get them. They're very expensive, but you can use those if you're gonna open up, say, something a little more than one of these guys here, just so you don't have to worry about static. But generally, with an iMac, if you run the tube along the bottom of the iMac, there's vent holes along there. So next time you get a chance, take a look. You'll see all those holes there. Air is pulled up through there. Current iMacs have 3 fans inside of them. The latest model has 2, but before that, there's 3 fans inside. One for your optical drive, one for your hard drive, and one for the CPU. And that's to keep it cool, because when you're doing a lot of work, it runs warm. You have the vents along the top of the iMac, that slot that runs across. Run the vacuum along the bottom, run it up across the top. And since we're on the topic of iMacs, there is a vent for the hard drive on the back of the computer. It is underneath the stand above where you plug in the power cord. That is usually the cause of hard drives dying. Because, like I said, the computer's working like an air filter. And as clean as you think your house is, it's not. This is what we end up with. You want to run that vacuum in the back there. If you want, hit it with the compressed air along the bottom, hit it on that vent in the back after you've cleaned it out. That will help. You will see dust. A can of compressed air.
Okay.
If you can get a can of compressed air, give it a couple of blasts in the air so you're not moving any moisture into it. Turn the computer off. And if you really want to be safe, unplug it. Then clean it, spray it with a little compressed air, plug it back in, fire it back up. It'll run cooler and life will be a little bit better for you in the long run. And your computer will probably last longer.
What about a Mac Mini?
Mac Minis, depending on which model it is, you can run the vacuum around the bottom of the older, bigger boxes. The newer style, they don't take in as much debris or dust as the older style did. So if it's not in a dusty area, you're usually in pretty good shape. So, software. This is some software that I recommend just because I like this stuff. The first one is called Mac Tracker. This program is absolutely amazing. It lists down every Mac computer ever made. And it lists down what it shipped with, it lists model numbers, prices, but the best part, it lists what operating system it shipped with and how far you can go with the current operating system. So someone earlier was asking about, well, how far can I go with this G4 machine I have? And for a lot of G4s, you're stuck at 10.4. Some of the last ones, you can go to 10.5. G5s, 10.5, that's it. You're not going any further. Intel, you can go higher. So this Mac Tracker program is available for your computer for free. It's also available for your iOS devices. So I have it on my phone because I use it probably 3 times a day. Because someone will say, how much RAM can I put in X? And I will take a look at this, be able to figure out what they need, and give them a recommendation on how far it'll go. The nice thing is, the Mac Tracker app will tell you what Apple recommends, and it'll tell you what it, in actuality, can do. There are a lot of 2008, 2007 MacBook Pros that will max out at 4 gigs of RAM, according to Apple. This tells you, well, actually, you can squeeze a 4 gig chip in one of it, and you can technically get away with 6 gigs of RAM in there. So, while Apple's not going to come out and say, yep, it'll do that, because they want to guarantee that it's going to run smooth for you all the time. If you want to take that chance and bump it up a little bit, you know, it's an option. You're not normally going to see that kind of information on most websites that sell memory, like Crucial or Kingston or some of the other sites, which are all real good, but you just won't. So the Mac Tracker app it's just great to go through it. And they even tell you when the software came out. They keep updating it. It's freeware. They'd love for a donation. So if you don't mind, send them a few bucks, you know, so they can keep making this great software. There's Daisy Disk, which is very similar to Grand Perspective. How many people, by show of hands, know what Grand Perspective is? Okay. So Grand Perspective is something that in 10.8 shows you how much of your hard drive is being used up and by what. Daisy Disk, we'll get there in a second. Daisy Disk does the same thing, but more. There is a program called Hazel, which helps you go through your operating system and your apps, help clean it up, make it run more efficient. iStat Pro is a fantastic piece of software for people that they want to know what their computer is doing all the time. It will tell you what the temperatures are, it'll tell you about your battery, it'll tell you how fast the fans are running, all this wonderful information. And then there is a program called Onyx, which if you're running anything 10.6 or less, is a really good program to help see what's going on with your system and also help you, maybe try and take care of some things that seem a little out of the ordinary if things are running funny.
Why do you 10.6 or less?
Because they have not upgraded Onyx after 10.6. Oh, they have? Okay, because I was looking for it last night and I couldn't find anything to say it would run in 10.8.
They have a different version, but it's still called Onyx.
Oh, great. Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. So,
How memory intensive is iStat Pro?
not much at all. It's a run behind the scenes type of program. It will not chew up much CPU at all, and it really doesn't use a lot of RAM as well. This is the Mac Tracker app. Like I said, you can get it through the Mac App Store. You can download it on your devices, and it's fantastic. Daisy Disk, as you can see, gives you an image and color codes what's being used up. So you could say maybe the blue is photos, green is video, blue might be maybe music or documents. So it gives you a nice illustration to see what's being used up on your drive, and then it will help you clean up. And it will also, my understanding is, it'll also go through and show you where you have duplicates and help you clean it up that way as well. Hazel is a really nice way to have the system run to keep things organized. It's for sale. It's 25 bucks if you want to do it. I would say if you keep your eye open, you might find it on sale. And usually when it's on sale, it's usually half price. And for $12.50, it's a good way to go. iStat Pro is free. And the nice thing about this is you can have it where you can download it and it'll be up in your menu bar. And you can just see next up by the battery icon, a list of different things that are going on. You can modify it to suit your needs. And again, it's just something I recommend as a nice utility for doing things. Okay. This is about hardware. Sure.
I get pop-ups from time to time.
Sure.
When running apps, advertising MacKeeper. Can you talk a bit about that?
I'd love to talk about MacGroup. So, how many people have $40 they can throw in the toilet? Okay? I am not a fan of MacGroup at all. It claims that it will make your system run more efficiently. It'll remove unwanted files that are not necessary to how you run your machine. I have not seen anyone tell me that it has done that. it will actually, in my opinion, slow down your machine because it's turning off stuff that, while it doesn't need to be running all the time, it disables it, and so when you need to use it, it won't pop up. And typically it'll tell you you have all kinds of issues when you do their little free thing, and then they want your $40. And I've dealt with a lot of folks that about 2 months later, they suddenly start having other issues going on with it. You can remove MacKeeper, run the uninstaller, and that's okay, that helps. But usually those folks end up having to reinstall their operating system. And depending on what was going on, they're not doing the simple archive and install method, leaving all their information right where it's at. They're doing the erase and install method. So I am not a fan of that software whatsoever. And I definitely would say stay away from it. Yeah, you're gonna see pop-ups, and it's gonna happen depending on what browser you're using. Even if in Safari with block pop-ups, you know, these guys are getting smarter, and now they're having it pop up behind your screen. And so suddenly you go to move a window, oh, hey, look. So save your money. I'm sure you got a better use of $40 for something else. Does that answer what you needed?
Perfectly.
Okay, great. All right, at this point, I'd like to sort of dive into hard drives and memory, the hardware side of the Mac. Typically, with a Mac computer, whenever somebody said, I need my computer to run more efficiently, run faster, it was always a case of, well, easy, add more RAM. More memory will just help everything run. You know, we could always tell people, well, quit out of the apps that you don't need to free up the memory, but honestly, more memory is great. The operating systems use so much memory just by themselves. 10.4 would use not even half a gig of memory. 10.5 was using about a half a gig of memory just for the operating system. 10.6, yeah, maybe 700 meg. Lion was a little over 900. And Mountain Lion, as far as I'm concerned, is using just a hair over a gig of RAM. It does a lot, it's very robust, but it's still using a lot of memory. And that's why in Lion and in Mountain Lion, it was suggested that you have a minimum of 2 gigs of RAM in your system. And I can tell you from personal experience, that's great if you're not going to open iPhoto. If you plan to open anything else that's a little memory intensive, you really want to be at least at 4 gigs. And any of the machines that can run 10.8 will work with 4 gigs of RAM. And so that's a good thing to do all the way around.
Now that you're on RAM Day, I've got a question for you. You kind of talked a little bit about it in the previous software section. Apple will say, you know, it takes up to 4 gigs of RAM, and you look at other sites and you go to 6 or something like that.
Right.
Putting the additional RAM in the machine doesn't put any additional stress on its component, does it?
Not that I'm aware of
Okay.
in that.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, my experience has been basically when Apple says, for example, this MacBook can only go up to 8, and then someone else comes out with chips that can make it go to 16, is Apple was stating what it could go to at the time of the chips that they tested. Not that it can't do more, but back when that machine was built, 8 was all that was available or that they tested.
Right.
So I've done those upgrades like 3 or 4 times beyond what the specs would say. I never had a problem.
Right. And if you, I guess it's sort of a, look, here's our plan. These boards in the computer will handle up to this at that point in time. And then when someone comes out with a chip that's a little larger, okay, maybe it'll work, but it's that your mileage may vary. You know, we're going to tell you get 30 miles a gallon, but if you're getting 33, are you going to get mad at us? Probably not. Jim?
Well, the biggest reason they don't test it with bigger memory is that they're testing their new systems. They don't want to go back and test an old system they've already shipped.
Exactly. Yep. So if you have an older machine, RAM is always a great way to go. Put in as much as you can afford. I will suggest, though, that if the name budget or value is in the name of the memory, ignore it. Do not buy it.
Okay, like I've got a late 07 iMac.
Sure.
It's got 4 gigs of RAM in it now. My understanding is that I could go to 6 if I switched one of the chips from a 2 to a 4.
Possibly,
But
yes.
the cost of doing so would be like over $100 for that
The 4 gig
4
chip.
gig chip.
Yeah. So you would have to. Well, that's a personal decision. At what point is it too expensive to go from there? I would say if you're planning to hold on to the computer for at least a year, that's $100 well spent. If you're planning to upgrade in the next 6 months, flip the coin and see where it goes. If you're planning to upgrade in less than 6 months, save your money, put it towards the new machine. So I think that would probably be a good way to go in the long run for you. Hard drives. Most hard drives in portable computers, such as your MacBook Pro, your MacBooks, run at 5,400 RPM. The MacBook Pros you can get with a 7,200 RPM drive. It's a small drive, but it spins awfully fast, and that's great for people that need that. It will not let you see your email faster. So don't think you need a 7,200 RPM drive just to check your email. It won't get you online faster. It won't do anything else faster. It just helps you get your files that you have on there come up a bit quicker. The hard drives inside your iMac, your MacBook Pros, and your G5 Towers and the older iMacs, those are typically 7,200 RPM hard drives. So they can handle pretty much what you're throwing at it. If you do a lot of video work, you will see the difference between a 5,400 RPM drive and a 7,200 RPM drive. Now that everything seems to be moving towards solid state drives, I can tell you it is a night and day difference on how your machine runs having a solid state drive versus a traditional hard drive. I was not a fan of the solid state drives in the computers when they came out. 1, because they were really expensive. 2, the size was just, it wasn't worth it for me. A 64 gig solid state drive is not enough room, period. That's what they ship in an 11-inch MacBook Air. If you're just using it for checking email and browsing the web, that's great. But it's not enough space for most stuff. Your newer models, like in the MacBook Pro Retinas, now you're dealing with, you got that 128, that's still a little small. 256, okay. 512, wow. And it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger, just like traditional drives did, and the price will drop. Bang for your buck, though, nowadays, the solid state drive. My son has a 2006 MacBook that I picked up for him really cheap. We put a solid state drive in it, and it has 2 gigs of RAM. That's all it can handle. I have a 2008 MacBook. It has 4 gigs of RAM, and it has a traditional 5,400 RPM drive. My MacBook starts up in 49 seconds. His MacBook starts up in 18. So, if you wanted a reason to go to a solid state drive, that's it. Right there. It's up and it's flying. Yes?
So you get the same fast boot up speed if you use the hybrid drive?
You know, I've seen some, are you talking like the Seagate Momentus drive that's the hybrid?
Well, it has like the SSD and
Right. I've actually helped somebody put one of those in a machine, and the question was, how much solid state drive is really there? And it doesn't say on the box how big of the solid state it is. I'm assuming it's enough to get you up and going. So I would think it's probably at least 16 gig, so an operating system could sit on it. But I haven't looked into it enough to really give you a good answer on that. Steve?
Yeah, I can't give you all the specifics on it, but I do have a hybrid drive in one, and I move 26 seconds.
Okay, so 26 seconds on the hybrid drive? That's amazingly fast. So, Gary?
One other thing I'll add to 7,200 RPM and SSD, the reason you want a faster drive, if you have the option, is not only what Dave's already talked about, but the apps will run faster, you will move faster, videos better. But if you do backups, if you're doing full backups or clones, those are going to go in half the time because the drive is working that much faster. So if you're doing a lot of backups or just even a lot of copying big files, that's another advantage of a faster drive.
Jim?
One of the things that slows a virtual memory computer like a Mac down is swapping, where when you tell the computer to do something else, it takes whatever it's doing, sticks it off on the disk drive, and starts doing something else. And it has to do that if it's limited in the number of brain cells it has. In other words, if it only has 2 gig of RAM and what you're doing would really run better than 4, then you're going to be shuffling stuff on and off your disk drive. So you can take an old MacBook Pro that'll only take 3 gig and make it run like one of the new machines by putting a solid state drive in just to speed up swapping.
Right. Right. And yeah.
Is there a better life expectancy with the solid state drive than with the traditional drive?
Personally, if you drop your computer, yes, solid state's going to be much better because it's a chip rather than a platter spinning around. And even though a lot of the drives have the sudden motion sensor to it, and it's supposed to lock it up and help protect it, if it falls out of your hands and hits the floor, that solid state drive you're going to pick up and get right back to where you were at. The other one you're going to be praying.
I would never drop my...
And that's a wonderful thing. But accidents happen.
Just from using it, is the traditional
I think it's too early to make the call on that one. I think it's much too early to say, is solid state going to last as long as the traditionals?
It's still out, but just from because we haven't had the history of solid state yet. But just from this is something mechanical that's spinning versus something that isn't. I gotta imagine that something that isn't mechanical and isn't spinning is gonna last long.
Do they
That
run?
makes sense, but I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, well, no one knows yet.
Right. Sir?
There are systems and hardware limitations on using that SSD drives.
Yes, there are. So if you're running an older operating system, you're probably not going to be using an SSD drive. If you're going to be at least 10.6, you're good to go.
Being a Windows user, I've built my desktop back about a year ago, and I used a brand new solid state, 2 brand new solid state drives in grade 0 configuration because I just love speed. And that was them. Now they have SSDs that are actually twice as fast as the fast thing that I've got.
Right.
And they're incredibly fast. But I want to say this, I am absolutely sure that all solid state drive manufacturers incorporate an algorithm in them so that they limit the number of read and write cycles any individual cell is used. They try to level the wear out on the drive. So
To spread it out evenly?
When it crashes, it's going to crash. But
Right.
up until then, it's good to go.
So, with that being said, here's my back and forth on solid state versus traditional drive. Traditional drive, the platter stops spinning, the arm freaks out, and won't read the disk. Okay. I have information that I don't have backed up. I hear that a lot. How do I get this back? Well, there is a company that I've actually used called Drive Savers. They're expensive as hell. But they will get back every last thing that you were looking for 99% of the time, including stuff you threw out a year previous. It's amazing how they do it, because if you go to their website, you can see how they make this happen. They take your drive into a clean room. They disassemble it. They pull the platters, put it in a new mechanism, and then they copy everything off of that platter onto an external drive. When they're done, they put your old platter back in your old case, button it up, and ship you everything, and send you a very, very expensive invoice. But they are very good. If you would prefer to avoid that, then I think Calvin will back me up on this one. You should be running backups anyways. And if you're not, you still should be running backups. And again, you're running backups, right? Okay. Brian?
That scenario, if you went through is perfect, except if you have a head crash.
Correct. And on their website, they even have an iOS app that will mimic different hard drive failures, so you can hear the sounds. Yeah, not real good. And it'll even vibrate your phone, similar to what the hard drive is doing. So they're really good. They will tell you if they're going to be able to do anything or not once they get the drive in their hands. If they cannot help you, I believe it is a nominal fee to cover the shipping, and that's it. But we had an 80 gig hard drive go on a Thursday. We overnighted it to them and got it back the following Tuesday morning. They got back all of our information, and this was back when all of our customer data was on this one drive. And we were either going to A, be out of business on Wednesday morning because we weren't going to be able to produce anything, or C, be really, really lucky that we were able to buy a few days. We got very lucky. We started making backups at that point in time. And certain data, believe it or not, was being put on zip disks still back when this happened. So we were backing stuff up left and right, and we were learning all about offsite storage, which back then was you took the drive home with you. Because there was no online storage, there was no other way of doing it, there was no time machine. It was let it go, let it copy, take the drive home. And that's what we were doing. So again, you are backing up, right?
How much did that cost you?
At that time, that was 12 years ago, it was $1,600 for 80 gigs. Now, that was also fast overnight, yesterday service. So it's there. The last time I looked on their site and tried to put a price together on, say, a 250 gig drive, it started at $1,200. And that was for like a 1 week turnaround service. So, but these guys do amazing, amazing work. Now, as far as solid state drives go, my understanding is if that drive goes, that means that chip fried. And I don't know how you're going to get anything off of it. Now, Drive Savers is saying they can get data off of solid state drives, but I don't know what their reputation is on that one yet. But honestly, if the chip fries, I would think that you're really out of luck. So again, you're backing up, right? Okay, good. Because Calvin would be really happy that you were backing up. Yes, sir.
On SSDs, I have an old MacGroup-Detroit.
Yeah.
I bought an SSD. I haven't installed it yet because
Okay.
I'm not sure. I know the first thing I want to do is do a backup of Super Duper.
Okay.
And install the hard drive, or the SSD. But then I'm not sure how to tell it what to transfer over or how, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Mechanics of
Right.
Somebody said that you can't just pick randomly certain applications because things
Right, welcome to invisible files.
Yeah, in other words, mirror it, and then leave the mechanical one running at the same time you're running the SSD, but I don't know how to tell the computer which one to.
Okay, well, I personally like Time Machine. I'm a big fan of Time Machine. Other people here, Super Duper, Carbon Copy Cloner, all very good software. If you have more questions about Super Duper or Carbon Copy Cloner, Jim Cutler, have a chat with him afterwards. I like Time Machine because it's just very basic. I have this data, I want to move it.
I will say that both, the default mode for both Carbon Copy Cloner and Super Duper is file copy, including all the invisible files.
Right.
So that's, most of the time, that's a pretty good approach that's pretty fast.
Right. And Time Machine is going to, if you want to bring over applications, it's all or nothing.
Yeah, and to add to that, it really, because I'm trying to understand where you want to end up. I know you want to end up with the solid state drive as your main drive in the Mac Pro, but it kind of sounds like you don't want everything you already had on the other drive on it. So that's where I'm confused. So if you're saying I have a 500 meg hard drive and I have a 500 gig hard drive and a 500 gig SSD, and I just want the SSD to be the new drive, then Carbon Copy Cloner, Super Duper, Time Machine will put everything onto the new drive. But if you're saying I have a 500 gig drive and a 256 SSD, and therefore everything won't fit, and I want to pick and choose what to put on, then I don't recommend any of those, because you're better off installing the OS, installing the applications you want on there, and copying the data.
That way,
That's going to be the cleanest, best way to do it. You start trying to copy apps and copy invisible files one by one or selectively, you're causing yourself more work and trouble than it's just worth installing the new apps with the updates.
Because you're almost guaranteed to miss.
yeah, something will not go right.
Right.
Yeah, so
So it really depends on where you want to end up with the new drive.
right.
I've been wondering, has any research been done on, like you mentioned, double speeds for the hard drives, 5400 versus 72, in laptops, and then the solid-state drives as being a memory, primary memory, as far as the energy that the stuff uses up.
Yes.
Battery life, which would be like last longer.
Solid state.
Solid
state, you'll get much better battery life because it's not having to spin up a drive and spin down a drive. It's there.
And with the 5400, 7200 versus.
That's just that's a speed thing, and there are places online that you can find results comparing drives. Here's a 5400 by Seagate, here's a 7200 by Seagate. How much energy does it use? How much time does it take for a boot up? How does it run at its speed? And it'll give you a lot of information like that. So there are places that you can find that.
Do you happen to know off the top of your head which 5400 or 7200 would last longer as far as battery life?
54 would last longer under battery life, which is why it goes in the MacBooks, not the MacBook Pros for the most part. You can get it in a MacBook Pro, the lower ends, but the higher end models typically, they're expecting you to do heavy lifting. So you will get a longer battery life on a 5400 RPM drive, but
It'll take you equivalently longer to get anything done, too.
yeah. So pros and cons. Yeah, your battery will last a little longer, but is it worth the offset of what you're trying to do? So. Yep.
I have a 2009 Mac Pro.
Okay.
I would like to put some 4 terabyte hard drives in it.
Okay.
Is that possible?
I believe so. On the 2009. The 2008, I think you're limited in size, but I think the 9 you can put a larger drive into it. I would recommend that the Mac Tracker app. That will tell you what the largest drive you can put in. So, for an example, I've got a G5 tower at home that I am using as a media device. I'm ripping all our CDs on it. I'm converting all our DVDs on it. The Mac Tracker app told me that this model would support a 1.5 terabyte hard drive in each slot. So I have a 1.5 terabyte hard drive in each slot. I have 7 gigs of RAM in it. The machine will go up to 8 gigs. So, and I got all this information by just pulling the app up on my phone, selecting the model that I have, and it's all there. And it tells me this is as far as you're going to go with the operating system. It gives you energy ratings. It gives you more information than you really need, but they lay it out in a very nice, clean manner. So it will assist you when you are looking to upgrade your machine or trying to, can I boost it up a little more? So it's that app alone, you won't go wrong with. And the fact that it's free makes it even better. Operating systems. If your machine can run the most current operating system, you have to decide, is it worth it for you? For most people, they feel forced into it because, well, I've been running 10.5, everything's running great. Oh, I got an iPhone. I can't sync my iPhone up to 10.5 because I have an iPhone 5. I need to upgrade my operating system. Okay. So how do you upgrade it? Well, you find out if you can first, because if you can't and you want to keep using the new equipment, you're probably looking at buying a new computer. Apple will sell you a copy of Snow Leopard 10.6 for $20. You cannot buy it in a store. It has not been in a store in probably 3 years since Lion came out, 2.5. But 1-800-MY-APPLE. I need a copy of 10.6. Okay. They take your credit card info, they get your address, they ship it out, and you have it in a few days. Because once you have 10.6, life gets easy. If your machine will let you, you now have the App Store, and if you can go up to 10.7 or 10.8, now that's just a download through the App Store. And you don't need to look for an install disk anymore, which makes a lot of people's lives real easy. So if you can upgrade, do that. If you're on 10.4 and your machine will go to 10.6, still buy the $20 disk, because Apple used to sell it for $129, but you will be doing a clean install. Because from 10.4 to 10.6, it's too big a jump to just do a simple upgrade. So you will need to take the big step. So again, back up, get it ready to go, your choice of how you want to back it up, and then you can move it back on once 10.6 is on.
Again, it's just ignorance on my part, but...
We have a lot of that.
Use the words, I've got a lot. You used the statement, if you can. Is that because of limitations on the hardware?
Correct. Some hardware will limit you to how far you can go. So if you have a G4, a G5 Mac, you're not going any further than 10.4, 10.5. And that's all there is to it. If you have an Intel Mac, you can go much further than that.
Thank you.
Kelvin?
Just another side note. Also, when you're going to go up on an operating system, make sure all the software that you're using will work with that new operating system, or else the investment is much larger.
Exactly. Hence, the Quicken Microsoft 2004 debate did not work in 10.7 or 10.8.
And to add to Calvin's comment and Dave's great summary, that really is the crux of the problem when we talk about upgrade. Because the computer you buy today, with the operating system on it today, and the software on it today, will do everything you bought it for until it dies. It's really a matter of, are you going to want to do new things? Like you mentioned the iPhone example, or there's some new app you want to run, or there's some new thing you want to do. So there's two ways of going about it. You can either stay on what you have and be happy because it does everything you bought it to do. And as long as you never want to do that new thing, life is great. But the minute you want to do that new thing, requiring a new OS or a new piece of hardware or a new something, now you have to look at everything, your printer drivers, your other equipment, your hardware, everything has to be looked at to say, if I go to this new OS, will all my other stuff work? And if you haven't been upgrading everything else along the way, it can be cost prohibitive to want to upgrade everything at once. So I've always been a fan of continuing to upgrade everything as often as I can. So that way, when I want to do that new thing, I just do it. I don't have to worry about having to stop and look at everything I have and upgrading it all at once. It's usually cheaper and better to do it as you go.
Right, and if you're the type, I was in the typesetting and printing business for 30 years. I can tell you that there are a lot of typesetters and printers that are cheap bastards. And they will not upgrade. They don't want to spend the money on new software. They're thinking that Photoshop 7 is just fine. Freehand's wonderful. And that's as far as they want to go with it. And then they get caught kicking and screaming all the way down the path into a new machine. Because now suddenly I'm putting this money out for a computer, I'm putting this money out for all this software because my customers demand it. Okay, well, let's look at the order of that. Your customers demand something from you. Okay, either you give it to them or you lose a customer. So that's something that you have to make that call. If you're using it for business, hey, it's technically, it can be a write-off. If you're not using it for business, then that is completely up to you to decide, do I want to put this money out there for this? Nobody's forcing you, you don't have to. But if you want to use the latest and greatest, sometimes you do have to step up a little further than you were anticipating. During the holidays, I think a lot of people that got an iPad, got an iPhone, and suddenly, how do I get my music on here? How do I get my photos on here? I got to plug it into a computer to get that stuff, otherwise I'm buying music and I'm taking pictures on my device. So that's something to keep in mind. And then last, miscellaneous equipment. This is monitors, this is printers, this is scanners. You probably have or know somebody that has this wonderful state-of-the-art scanner that does everything, bells and whistles, and it's fantastic. It also runs in 10.4. It does not run in 10.7, 10.8, or 10.6 even. Well, I spent, a couple $100 on this scanner. Well, yeah, you did. But now your new computer won't work with it because, geez, while that's a great scanner, that company is out of business. Or they got bought up by somebody else, and there's no software for it. So again, on the hardware side of things, you need to keep that when you're putting a budget together on what you're upgrading to. Because suddenly that older stuff doesn't work. Or the company doesn't think it's worth the investment of upgrading the software. Probably because they'd like you to buy a new printer or a new scanner. But that's just business. So that's where we're at with that part. Give me a sec here.
They make third-party people make applications, though, don't they?
There are. Yeah, there are some third-party stuff. Give me a sec. There we go. There are third-party products out there that people will write, like for older printers. There's like the GIMP prints. Oh. Got it. And let's see if it comes back. There we go. Sorry. Okay.
Talking about
got everything
one
rolling.
of the fax, and she uses the mail application that she's been using since, I think, OS 7 or something like that. So when her G5 iMac started dying, we knew that it could be resuscitated for a little while, but it was a dead-end machine, time to get a new one. So we had to worry about finding things like, will her mail application work, or is she going to have to figure out how to use Apple Mail? One of the other things is, what is she going to do about faxes? And so we had to do things like get a US Robotics USB modem for fax use, which still works with mountain line, but you never know it unless you talk to somebody here, for example, or some other kind of Mac consultant. It's not something you'll learn at the Apple Store, for example.
Probably not.
But the whole discussion revolved around what did she actually need to do, and mail and faxing were the two things that she had to do. And so at this point, it's long enough ago that she went to Lion that I'm not sure what she did about mail, but I do know that her fax solution with a third-party modem worked, and of course we fixed her up with a backup solution running time.
Okay, so what I've got up now, this is a list of tools that for the average person, if you're going to try and upgrade your machine, such as, say, a hard drive upgrade, this is a list of tools that probably would be really handy to have. A Torx driver is a star-shaped bit, and most Apple computers use anywhere from a T6 to a T15 bit inside. But for really simple things, T6, T8, T10 is what you would need to replace a hard drive in either a notebook computer or a Mac Mini or an iMac or even a Mac Pro. Mac Pros are the easiest because it's on a sled. Pull it out, undo the 4 screws, screw the bracket onto the new sled, slide it in, partition it, and you're up and rolling. So Mac Pros are hands down the easiest things to work with.
What are the screws on the bottom of the ears? They're not Torx.
No, they're not. Those screws are pentalobe screws, and they were designed by Apple to keep the customer out of the computer. Just like on the Retinas. Because really, there's nothing user serviceable inside. So like that old sticker on the back of the old TV sets, caution, no user serviceable parts. That's true. That's not going to stop a lot of people though. And I'm probably one of those people that will open it up just to see how it works. So that right there, if you want to, yes, you can find those tools. They're going to be a little difficult to get. They're not cheap. If you're serious about buying good tools for doing computer work, the company you want to look for is called WIHA, W-I-H-A. And they make, hands down, in my opinion, the very best hand tools for working on a computer. They do. And they also, their tools, you can get them in the, where they're ESD safe, that's electrostatic discharge, so you don't have to worry about that. They make Torx drivers, they make Phillips drivers, and again, a 00, a 0, and a number 2 Phillips, what you're probably going to need for any of the Macs that we're talking about. A black stick, which is made out of nylon, again, to prevent electrostatic discharge. It's also known as a spudger. There are a number of websites that you can buy these from. And it's sort of amazing that a little piece of black nylon is going to run you about $6. But it usually will last you a long time if you don't do this for a living. A must is a screw bin. If you can get one of those little plastic bins like people put beads in that have a lid so stuff doesn't go spilling, that's great. In a pinch, an ice cube tray, because that way you can separate your screws. I will tell you that a 12-inch Mac or PowerBook G4, to get to the hard drive, you are at 68 different screws. The new computers are not that much to get into. If you have a MacBook Pro and you want to swap the drive out in it, you are using a Phillips screwdriver. You have 10 screws on the bottom panel, 2 screws holding the bracket next to the hard drive, and the drive pops out. It's that easy. If you are doing an older MacBook Pro, 2006 or 2008 model, pull the battery out, and you need a Phillips screwdriver to take the L bracket out, and the drive slides right out. It's that easy. The shield that it's in, that goes around the drive, requires a T8 driver, because there's 4 studs on the side that hold the shield in that are also the guides for sliding it in. So that too comes in handy. If you're working on an iMac, a aluminum iMac, not a 2012 model, you need suction cups, which are essentially fancy toilet plungers, to take the glass off. The glass is held on by magnets, but you need suction cups to pop it off, and you need one at each corner to do it. If you're working on an older Mac Mini, you need 2 putty knives, because when you turn it upside down, you put the putty knives in on each side, and you pop the whole bottom assembly out, so the case comes off. An anti-static strap is wonderful. You can usually pick that up at Micro Center locally, or if you're buying memory or a hard drive online, usually wherever you're buying it, there is the ability to purchase an anti-static strap through them. Take apart guides. Wonderful stuff, because it shows you how to do it correctly. Somebody else has broken it, not you. And that way you don't have to walk into a store someplace and say, I tried to do this, but I broke it, and now it's worse. So this one saves you money by getting those guides. They're all over the internet. I wholeheartedly recommend iFixit.com. Matter of fact, they have an iPad app just for them, and it gives you just about all the current and some of the older Mac computers for how to take it apart to do simple things. So that's a good one. OWC, Other World Computing, is by far my favorite company for buying memory, because they are selling the same memory that Apple uses, so you know it's good. They also have their own private label, which is the same memory Apple's using, and it's usually a lot cheaper. So you can do a little investigation, but you'll probably save 50% by going that. And especially if you're on a machine that's outside of warranty, that's a great way to go. Save some money. Instead of spending maybe $100 for 4 gigs of RAM through Apple, you can probably pick it up through OWC for about $60, maybe $50. So, I mean, the prices vary on your model. Gary?
Also, I'll second that recommendation for OWC, if you're especially buying a hard drive also, because they'll sell you just a bare drive, they'll sell it to you in an external case, or they'll sell you the bare drive that you're going to upgrade to, and I'll call it cheap external case to put your old one in, so that way you get to still use both drives. And when you take your old one out and put it in the case they give you, you can then connect it to your machine to copy everything back over to the new drive that you just put. So they're great, and the kit comes with all the screwdrivers that you need to do the whole thing.
Right.
So they're great at stuff like that.
Jim?
And if you're the geeky type that likes tech manuals, OWC has a podcast of all of their installed videos.
Yep.
So if you want to look up how to put in a data doubler in your 2012 Mac Mini, there's a podcast for that.
Right, and they have a lot of videos showing you how to do it.
Those are video podcasts.
Is that what they, okay, so hands down, there's a lot of resources out there for you to do it yourself, should you want to do it yourself. Yes, sir.
So OWC has on the RAM lifetime replacement policy.
Yes.
I had some RAM go bad. It was 6 years later.
Mm-hmm.
I called them up and I keep little records and I gave them a little order number and they shipped the thing out.
Yep. I had that with the G3 iMac.
Amazing.
And I'm like, and they're like, just read me the number off the chip. Okay. Oh, hey Dave, here you go. Oh wow, okay. And they mailed me a new chip, and what do I do with the old one? I just snap it in half and recycle it. Okay. So yeah, it's a great company. They're in Chicago. I always tell people, if you have them send it via the post office, it usually gets there faster than the overnight FedEx. So, because I've ordered memory twice one day. In the morning, I ordered it and went, yeah, just send it cheap, free shipping through the post office, cool, do that. And then, oh geez, later on, I need some memory for a friend, and they like, overnight it, whatever, I'll pay it. And I paid $12 for overnight. I got the other memory in the morning, FedEx showed up at 4:30. So, yeah, so it's a really good way to go. It's a great company. So your decision. On their website, they give you a lot of good information.
They're based in Chicago, so
yeah.
You only pay for overnight unless if you
have to. Yeah.
Have it that next day. Otherwise, when you do standard shipping, you probably go the next day.
Okay, so this is my supply list that I think if you're going to work on your computer in your home, you should have these items. A bath towel. No, it's not because you're sweating bullets on this. You have the bath towel if you're working on an iMac, because chances are on the older iMacs, the white ones, you want to lay it down. Well, you don't want to get it scratched. If you're working on a newer one and you want to lay it down too, the bath towel is great, just so you have a nice, easy, clean surface and you don't worry about scratching anything. Like Terry said, a hard drive enclosure, because if you pull the old drive out and you pop it in, there you go. OWC has a package. If you want to switch over to a solid state drive, they have a whole kit. They sell you the solid state drive, they sell you the tools that you'll need for the computer that you're working on, and they sell you a hard drive enclosure for you to put your old drive into so you can then just move everything right over. And it's a reasonable price. A hard drive enclosure, if you went locally to say Micro Center, will run you anywhere from 15 to 25 bucks for a notebook size hard drive, a 2.5-inch enclosure. 3.5-inch enclosures, like in your iMacs, are going to be a little bit more money. And most of those drives are USB based. So unless you have tons of information, if you're pulling a 250 gig hard drive out and putting a 500 in, but your 250 is full, you may want to consider getting the enclosure that has FireWire, if your machine supports that, which it should, and move your data that way because it moves faster than USB 2. But that's up to you. A hard drive with an OS installer. I was speaking with somebody earlier about this. They were looking to upgrade a machine because their optical drive didn't work. If you have a hard drive and you can get an operating system installer put on that drive, you can boot it up from that. I have a number of hard drives that I've done that. I've got a bootable partition, so I can boot up in 10.6 or 10.7 and look at someone's computer and determine what's going on. I also have installers on there as well, so I can boot 10.5, 10.6, 10.7, 10.8 from that same drive because I partitioned it. The biggest thing that I saw online, somebody was talking about putting the new operating systems, 10.7 or 10.8, on a flash drive. You need an 8 gig flash drive. Well, I, for grins, took an old iPod Nano that I had. The scroll wheel did not work because it got wet. But I was able to enable it in disk mode, and I now have a 16 gig flash drive. I took this drive, partitioned it in disk utility, put the 10.7 installer on one half, the 10.8 installer on the other half. And so now, instead of carrying around that small portable hard drive about the size of a phone, I now carry around a Nano, and I've got 2 installers that I can run from that Nano. And now I'm not worried about where did that USB cord go, because I always know where my cord for this and this is because it's the same cord. And gee, that's the same cord for the Nano. So if you've got an older iPod that will let you enable disk use mode and it's at least 8 gigs, you can put an operating system on that as to install on your Mac if you want to do that. That's up to you. There are the unofficial Apple weblog or website TUAW, has instructions on how to do this, and that's where I got them and was able to do it. It's a little geeky, but it's sort of cool. Calvin.
Just so I'm understanding correctly, you said as an installer, not as a bootable drive.
Correct. Because as a bootable drives, it needs much more space than 8 gigs. But as an installer, 8 gigs is really all you need, and you can then go from there because it's a compressed image. So when you start the install process, it decompresses it on the system that you're working on. So that's where you're at there. TUAW.com. Yep. Yep. The unauthorized Apple website or weblog. So a bunch of funny people. Okay. So just some sites.
You gotta tell us why you have that teapot.
Oh, that's right. So the teapot. I'm assuming you're doing this in your home. And most people want a lot of nice space to do it. So they pick the kitchen table. The teapot is, because Calvin taught me this a long time ago. The teapot is to put moisture in the air. Fill it with water, put it on to boil before you do anything. Because you don't want static electricity in the air. When you sit down at the table, hopefully the teapot has whistled and has created moisture in your air. And so that way you don't worry about getting that little static shock. You also want to make sure that any pets or children or spouses or significant others are nowhere near you while you're doing this. So you have them go make you a cup of tea while you're at it, and that way you can do the work, because most of this can be done in about 15 to 30 minutes for most of these, like a hard drive install. RAM should take you 5 to 10 minutes tops, and that's just because you don't know how to cut the bag open that the RAM came in, or you can't get the plastic case that it's sealed in open. Because it is truly really, really fast. If you have an iMac, the instructions for putting RAM is on the bottom of the foot. If you have an older MacBook, take the battery out. The instructions are right there. And if it's something else, MacBook Pro, the instructions are online. It's so easy to do yourself.
You had a micro...
Right, so microfiber cloth is for cleaning up when you're done.
Yeah, and...
Because you get fingerprints on stuff.
I was told that you could use a used fabric softener, sheet of fabric softener to clean the screens.
You could.
iPhones and computers.
Mm-hmm.
Is that...
Yeah, on your iPhone, your iPad, your iPod, and any Apple computer, you don't want to use Windex. You don't want to use that multi-surface cleaner with vinegar. Or something that has, ammonia and vinegar are not good for the coatings that are on the glass. On the older MacBooks Pros and MacBooks and iMacs that did not have the glass over it, people would clean it up to get the prints off, and then were very surprised why there was a gray cloudy area on their screen. And that was because of using something with ammonia or vinegar, because it does take the coating off that screen, and the glass has a coating on it as well. And we've seen people bring stuff in with Windex on it, and we're wiping it down with the alcohol wipes, trying to get the Windex residue off of it to get it clean, because it's just all smeary.
The only product I trust for cleaning the screen is iClear, I-K-L-E-F-A-R, whole water.
Right.
Just don't use any chemicals.
So that's where 2 microfiber cloths come in really handy. Get one wet with warm water, wring it out till it's just barely damp, wipe down what you need to, and then use the dry one to buff it out.
Right.
By doing that, you're protecting the computer. Again, if you're going to put any liquid near your computer, turn it off, just in case. Jim?
Well, I just wanted to add to that, if you're working on an iMac and you popped off the front glass, you really don't even want to risk things like fabric cleaner, because fabric softener, because the way that works is it leaves the coating on the fabric that absorbs water.
Right.
And so that you're back to
On the outside, you're fine.
damp microfiber cloth for the hard drive.
If you're doing an iMac, you don't even want a damp microfiber cloth. Use a dry one, because if you get a fingerprint on the LCD, just use a dry one to try and gently buff it out and go from there. They do make a little device that you can use to clean the inside of the glass, and you can use, it comes apart and there's an even smoother piece of plastic that has microfiber on it that's used for cleaning the LCD. And that's something that you can buy online if you need to. So that's an option as well. Calvin?
Did I roll off into the twilight zone, or did I see something on that list that said magnetic block?
Yes, you did see magnetic block, and I'm sorry I jumped ahead. The magnetic block is for your screwdrivers. You want the little thing so you can magnetize the tip of the driver, because I will guarantee you, you will drop a screw. And it'll go someplace you can't reach. But you can get the tip of the screwdriver there so you can pick up that screw and put it back where it belongs.
The other thing you can do is to go to the dollar store, you can get one of those long mechanics magnets
True.
on a stick, which is good if you happen to do your job over top of carpet and you drop screws into the mat.
Right.
You just wave it over there and luckily it'll snap out.
Right. Well, and that's the whole other point of having the bath towel on the table, because you lay the screws down on the bath towel if you don't have that bin or ice cube tray.
I've been in and out of a number of laptops, and the best way I found of keeping track of screws and such is to go through the process, take 8.5 by 11 sheet paper, and when you're at a certain layer, disassembly,
Right.
put a sketch of a whatever, a hard drive or whatever, and put secretary's putty. It's like gum. I don't know if you know what the stick post.
Right.
Put a little dab at each corner that a screw comes in, and put it at that location.
Sure.
Even a rectangular item might have different length screws.
Yeah. I've seen people use double-sided tape, carpet tape, and that'll do the trick, but my wife gets really mad when the double-sided tape goes on the kitchen table. So his idea might be good, but the bin's even better.
And you continue on each
Yep.
layer and then go backwards.
Yep.
What I've done is, if the cube's in front of me that I'm taking the screws out all the way around, I'm taking the screw out and laying it down in front of me in the same order.
Right.
So that way, because some are different lengths, so that even though they're using the same tool to take out, let's say all 10,
Right.
some are longer than the others, and they won't go back, you need to go back and
And that's very important, because if you put the longer screw in the wrong hole, not good.
Right.
Gets real expensive.
And by the way, what's the worst thing no one's mentioned is when you have that screw left over after
Well, we haven't.
Well, there's something you didn't put back in.
Right. Okay. One more.
To enhance that just a little bit, if you're not taking apart laptops very often, but just occasionally, use cardboard, draw on that, push the screw into the cardboard.
Sure.
For a box.
Yeah, like corrugated cardboard, yeah. But a lot of these screws that you're doing on the portables, they're very small. And pushing them in, some of them it's a little tough. Okay, so that's a good tip. This screen is just some of the places I can say I've never had any bad luck with these ones. Otherworld Computing out of Chicago, fantastic. Great support. You can call them up. The 800 number is right at the top of their webpage. Their website is macsales.com, which is sort of confusing, but they said, well, it was easier to make it macsales.com than have somebody type in otherworldcomputing.com. It's more memorable, so I agree with that.
It does work.
Yeah, it does. Newegg is a great place if you want to buy hard drives on the cheap. They run sales weekly. And they used to be, for whether you were Mac or PC, that was the place to go to buy a hard drive, to buy memory, to buy all kinds of stuff. I bought our last carpet cleaner from Newegg. They now carry everything. They've turned into Walmart.
You gotta be a little careful with them, because if you buy the wrong thing, you bought the wrong thing.
Right. Their return policy is not always the best, but if you know what you're buying, you can usually get a screaming deal on it. The website in the middle is called Accelerate Your Mac. This is the site that I started with when I wanted to be able to make a machine that would only go to 10.3, go to 10.4. And this is a bunch of geeky tech people that they have the, hey, the new thing came out, here's the benchmarks, so here's all your tech specs. So it's xlr8yourmac.com. It's just a big forum site, but they have a blog running on every day, and you can get all kinds of information about stuff that people are doing with some older machines, trying to bring them up to date, as well as what they're doing with some of the newer machines to try to squeeze a little extra oomph out of those. So again, helpful websites, OWC, Newegg, Accelerate Your Mac, of course, MacGroup.org. Should be, hopefully, your first stop on anything else, because if you have a question, like I did, this is a great place to post it, because you'll get an answer, may not be right that minute, but you'll usually see an answer, you know, that day, next day, if it's something that somebody can answer. And then I have started listening to a podcast series called Mac Power Users, and the website is macpowerusers.com. Two people going over everything that we would want to talk about, and they're up to about 160 podcasts right now. They've been doing it for a few years, and really, really helpful. Information on stuff that I didn't think I'd be interested in, and then stuff that, yeah, okay, I knew this already. But still, there's always something you can learn there. The podcasts are a little lengthy. They usually run an hour to an hour and a half. But if you're on a long trip, it makes it interesting. So these sites here, just some starting places to go. Yes, sir.
Okay, question. In the last week, I've had my time machine tell me that they can't do the backup.
Okay.
Is it possible to replace the hard drive in my time machine?
Your time machine or your time capsule?
Time capsule.
Okay, no. Yeah, exactly. The time capsule is sort of your 7-Eleven theory. You got your wireless router, you got your hard drive. Here you go, it's nice and convenient, it's all right there. But if one thing goes, you're sort of sunk. If you're under warranty, you can get it replaced. If you want to just replace the hard drive, you won't open it up and get it back together again.
One more option. How old is it?
I'm sorry, what is it?
How old is it?
About 4 years.
Okay.
Depending on the model, because of course they do time capsules. You might be able to get away with just plugging in an external USB drive and using that if you don't want to buy a whole new time capsule.
Right. Or you can delete, if it's a problem where you're out of space, you can delete some older backups, but if it's not recognizing the drive.
When it wasn't working, I opened Disk Utilities and just highlighted the drive, and right away I got the things they
Okay.
no problem.
So then,
It could just need reformatting, or
right.
you can get away with plugging in an external and using that for your time machine. It'll be bigger than probably the one you have in there anyway.
Yeah, I mean, so you have options.
Yep.
They may not be what you're looking for, but you've got options.
That's great.
So, okay, and then I'm done.
An extension of that business about the time capsule using external drive. If you have an old mini or an old laptop that you can't easily take apart, or a newer iMac you can't easily take apart, as long as it'll boot to the option R successfully, you can plug in an external drive and treat it just like an internal drive. It may be slower, it may be faster, depending on the machine and the drive.
Right.
But I've resuscitated G4 Mini and a couple of other machines just by simply putting an external drive on, and just life goes on, and it's a usable machine if you're not in a rush. And
right.
Greatly extended the lifetime.
So yeah, you can make your older equipment last a little bit longer. That's not a problem. But again, you may have to jump through a couple of hoops to do that. You have to decide if it's worth it to you to do that. Okay?
Is
Last one?
WC strictly Mac related?
No. They're
like New Way?
Yeah. I mean, you can buy what you want, but they sell memory for PCs. They sell hard drive's a hard drive.
Yeah, hard drive's hard drive.
So,
You have
yeah.
a white Honda Fit, your lights are on.
Oh, Steve.
So, okay. Thank you.